Why Israel is attacking Iran, the 45-year war you didn't know was happening. They were allies, best friends actually. Israel and Iran worked together, shared intelligence, conducted joint military operations. Iranian pilots trained in Israel. Israeli engineers worked in Tehran. And then, almost overnight, Iran declared Israel its mortal enemy and vowed to wipe it off the map. What happened? And why, 45 years later, are we watching this Cold War turn hot? This is the story of how two Middle Eastern powers went from brothers in arms to sworn enemies. And I need to warn you, the truth is far more complicated than anything you've seen on the news. Welcome to the untold history of the Israel-Iran conflict. And trust me, everything you think you know about this is probably wrong. Let's start with something that will blow your mind. In the 1960s and 70s, Israel and Iran were strategic partners. Not just friendly, actual allies. This was during the reign of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, and he saw Israel as a crucial counterweight to the Arab states that surrounded Iran. Think about the geography for a second. Iran is Persian, not Arab. It's Shia Muslim, surrounded by Sunni Arab states that viewed Iran with suspicion. Iraq to the west was hostile. The Arab states of the Gulf didn't trust Tehran. Egypt under Nasser was promoting pan-Arab nationalism that excluded Iran. So the Shah made a calculation. My enemy's enemy is my friend. And Israel's enemies were also Iran's competitors. The partnership was deep. Israel sold weapons to Iran. Iranian oil flowed to Israel through a secret pipeline. Israeli intelligence helped train Sabak, the Shah's secret police. Mossad and Iranian intelligence shared information about Arab states and Soviet activities. There were even reports of joint operations in Iraqi Kurdistan, supporting Kurdish rebels against Baghdad. Israeli construction companies built infrastructure in Iran. Trade flourished. It wasn't just a marriage of convenience, it was a thriving relationship built on shared strategic interests. And then came 1979, the Iranian Revolution, and everything changed in an instant. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile and overthrew the Shah. The Islamic Republic of Iran was born. And one of Khomeini's first declarations was that Israel was the little Satan, with America being the great Satan and must be destroyed. Why? What did Israel do to deserve this sudden hatred? Here's where we need to understand the ideology driving Khomeini's revolution. This wasn't just about replacing one government with another. Khomeini was building a theocratic state based on his interpretation of Shia Islam and his concept of Vilayat-e-Faqih, the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. In this worldview, Israel represented everything wrong with the modern world. It was a Western implant in Muslim lands. It occupied Jerusalem, the third holiest site in Islam. It was supported by America, the great Satan. Fighting Israel wasn't just politics, it was religious duty. But there's also a strategic calculation here that people miss. Khomeini wanted to export his revolution across the Middle East. He wanted to position Iran as the leader of the Muslim world, not just the Shia world. And there's one issue that unites Sunni and Shia, Arab and non-Arab, across all the usual dividing lines: opposition to Israel. By making anti-Israel rhetoric central to Iran's identity, Khomeini gave Iran influence far beyond its borders. It was brilliant in a dark way. Iran could now build alliances with Sunni groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad, even though they were religiously different, because they shared the anti-Israel cause. Throughout the 1980s, the hostility was mostly rhetorical. Iran was busy fighting an 8-year war with Iraq. Israel was dealing with Lebanon in the first Intifada. They were enemies in theory, but not yet in practice. That changed in the 1990s with Hezbollah. Israel had invaded Lebanon in 1982 to push out the PLO. The invasion was supposed to be quick. It turned into an 18-year occupation of southern Lebanon. And into that vacuum stepped Iran, creating and funding Hezbollah, the Party of God. Hezbollah became Iran's first successful proxy. Iran provided weapons, training, and millions of dollars. Hezbollah provided something Iran desperately wanted: the ability to strike at Israel without direct confrontation. And it worked. Hezbollah's guerrilla war made the occupation so costly that Israel finally withdrew from Lebanon in 2000. This was Iran's proof of concept. You don't need to fight Israel directly. You build proxies, arm them, train them, and let them do the fighting while you maintain plausible deniability. If you're starting to see how decades of decisions and ideology led to the conflict we're seeing today, then you need to subscribe to History Incomplete. We don't just tell you what's happening, we show you the long chain of causes that brought us here. Hit that subscribe button because this story gets even more complex. The 2000s brought a new dimension: nuclear weapons. Iran had started a nuclear program under the Shah, actually with American help. After the revolution, the program was stopped and restarted multiple times. But by the early 2000s, evidence emerged that Iran was enriching uranium and potentially pursuing nuclear weapons capability. For Israel, this was an existential threat. Israel has maintained a policy of nuclear ambiguity, never confirming or denying it has nuclear weapons, though everyone assumes it does. Israel's nuclear monopoly in the Middle East has been a cornerstone of its security strategy. The idea of Iran, a country whose leaders regularly call for Israel's destruction, obtaining nuclear weapons was Israel's nightmare scenario. Israeli officials began talking about a red line, the point at which Iran's nuclear program would become advanced enough that Israel would have to act militarily to stop it. In 2010, something unprecedented happened. Computer systems at Iran's Natanz nuclear facility started malfunctioning. Centrifuges used for uranium enrichment began spinning out of control and destroying themselves. Iranian nuclear scientists started dying in mysterious car bombs and assassinations. This was Stuxnet, one of the most sophisticated cyber weapons ever created, widely believed to be a joint Israeli-American operation. And it was combined with a covert assassination campaign against Iranian nuclear scientists. Israel and Iran were at war. It just wasn't declared. Iran responded by deepening its proxy strategy. Hezbollah in Lebanon was just the beginning. Iran built up influence in Iraq after the American invasion toppled Saddam Hussein. It sent forces and proxies to Syria to support Bashar al-Assad in the civil war. It armed and funded Hamas in Gaza and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. By the 2010s, Iran had created what Israeli defense officials called the Ring of Fire, hostile Iranian proxies completely surrounding Israel. Hezbollah in the north with an estimated 150,000 rockets, Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, militias in Syria, even attempts to establish a presence on the Golan Heights. And here's the crucial part: Iran was now right on Israel's borders. Not Iranian soldiers with Iranian flags, but Iranian-funded, Iranian-trained, Iranian-armed forces operating under different names. The Syrian civil war was the game changer. Iran sent revolutionary guards, funded militias, and helped turn the tide for Assad. But in doing so, they established a permanent military presence in Syria. From Syria, Iran could supply Hezbollah through land routes instead of risky air shipments. They could build weapons factories. They could potentially move precision-guided missiles right to Israel's border. Israel made a decision. We can't allow this. And starting around 2013, Israel began a campaign of airstrikes in Syria targeting Iranian positions, weapons shipments, and infrastructure. Hundreds of strikes, sometimes multiple per week. This is where we start getting to the current situation. For years, Israel struck Iranian targets in Syria, and Iran mostly absorbed the hits. They'd rebuild, reposition, try again. It was a shadow war with clear rules. Israel wouldn't attack Iranian territory directly, and Iran wouldn't respond from Iranian soil. October 7, 2023 shattered many assumptions. Hamas launched the deadliest attack on Israel in decades. Thousands of rockets, terrorists crossing the border, massacres in Israeli communities, over 1,200 people killed. And Iran? Iran celebrated. Hamas is an Iranian proxy. The weapons came from Iran. The training came from Iran. Iranian officials praised the operation. Israel's response in Gaza has been devastating, but it's also been accompanied by an intensification of the broader conflict with Iran. More strikes in Syria, assassinations of Iranian commanders, and critically, strikes have started hitting Iranian territory directly, including an April 2024 strike that reportedly hit an Iranian airbase. The rules of the shadow war are breaking down. And then there's the nuclear issue, which brings us full circle. The 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA, was supposed to freeze Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. America pulled out in 2018. Iran responded by gradually violating the limits. By 2024, Iran has enriched uranium to 60% purity, a stone's throw from the 90% needed for a weapon. Israel's nightmare is getting closer to reality, and Israeli officials are again talking about that red line. Prime Minister Netanyahu has repeatedly said Israel will do whatever it takes to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. So why is Israel attacking Iran? Let me give you the Israeli perspective first, then the Iranian one. Israel's view. Iran is an ideological regime committed to our destruction. They say it openly. They fund terrorists who attack our cities. They're building a military infrastructure around our borders. They're developing nuclear weapons. We tried diplomacy. The nuclear deal failed. We tried covert action. They keep rebuilding. At some point, we have to stop the threat before it becomes unstoppable. Every day we wait, Hezbollah gets more missiles. Iran gets closer to a bomb. We're not attacking Iran. We're defending ourselves against Iranian aggression. Iran's view. Israel is a colonial settler state built on stolen Palestinian land. They have nuclear weapons and attack their neighbors with impunity. They've assassinated our scientists, bombed our facilities, killed our people. They're backed by America and can act without consequences. We support resistance movements because the Palestinians have a right to fight occupation. We pursue nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. But even if we weren't, Israel has hundreds of nuclear weapons, and no one says anything. The real aggressor is Israel, and we have every right to defend ourselves and support those fighting occupation. Two completely incompatible narratives. Both sides see themselves as defending against existential threats. Both sides point to the other's actions as proof of hostile intent. And here's what makes this so dangerous right now. The constraints that kept this a shadow war are disappearing. Iran is closer to nuclear capability than ever. Israel is more willing to strike Iranian territory directly. Hezbollah has more firepower than ever. Hamas has just demonstrated its capability to overwhelm Israeli defenses. Syria's government, Iran's ally, is stable again. All the pieces are in place for a massive regional war. One miscalculation, one strike that goes too far, one response that crosses a line, and the shadow war becomes a real one. The Iran-Israel conflict isn't just about recent events. It's the culmination of 45 years of ideology, strategy, proxy wars, nuclear ambitions, and existential fears. It's two powers with completely incompatible visions of the Middle East, each building capabilities to destroy the other, each convinced they're acting in self-defense. And the truly terrifying part? There's no obvious off-ramp, no easy diplomatic solution. No simple answer that addresses both sides' core concerns. Israel believes it cannot survive with a nuclear Iran and Iranian proxies on its borders. Iran believes it cannot be secure or spread its influence while Israel exists and maintains its military dominance. Both are probably right from their own perspectives. This is what makes the situation so dangerous and so tragic. It's not a cartoon story of good guys and bad guys. It's two nations trapped in a security dilemma where everything one side does to increase its security makes the other side less secure, which drives them to respond, which makes the first side less secure, in an endless spiral. Subscribe to History Incomplete if you want to understand the real complexity behind the headlines, because the media will give you today's events. We give you the decades of history that explain why those events are happening and why they're so hard to stop. The algorithm might not like nuance, but understanding the world requires it. So here's my final question for you. Knowing all of this history, all of this complexity, what do you think happens next? Can this end without a massive war? Is there any scenario where both Israel and Iran feel secure enough to step back? Or are we watching an inevitable collision that's been building since 1979? Let me know in the comments. And remember, understanding history doesn't mean picking sides. It means understanding why all sides are making the choices they're making. That's the only way we can hope to find a path forward. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one, where we tackle another conflict that's way more complicated than the headlines suggest.